Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's see. Fantastic morning.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Let's see who's in the chat with us today. William Wellborn, good morning. He says, "Hey Jane, I'll be there as soon as I finish watching Sky." Okay, I'm here now. I don't know what that was. I think I played an old video. That was weird. Yes. Boomer. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing this morning? I want to say hello to the chat. Let's see who we have here this morning. We have, let's see, there were some earlier. There's some people here earlier. The Pedantic Penguin, good morning. We also have, let's see, Sven, the Naked Nordic Ninja. Hail, good morning. The Clown World Review is with us this morning. Good morning. William Wellborn is here. Hello. Jacquem Stark, good morning to you. We also have Zachariah 315 and Max Anderson. Hello. Keck, good morning. Zadian Star Shadow, howdy. Devil-Eyed Elvis is here. Hello. You're sleepy. I don't know why my phone keeps going off. Where is it? Let's see. Let me cut my phone off before it rings. Y'all, it has been a heck of a week. I'm also sleepy. Hello. Supreme Comics Girl, hello. How are you? It's the afternoon in Ireland. Awesome. Yeah, William, that was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. That was so weird. I don't know why that started playing because that wasn't pulled up as a video. That was so freaking bizarre. I don't know what that was about. I don't know what that was. That's so weird. But let's see. Let's talk about what's on the agenda for today. So we're going to be talking about the Rewriting Ripley's Raggedy Lies in their In Plain Sight article. I'm not going to play the video because I'm not going to give them that kind of press or support. But you can find it simply by Googling it if you choose to. We're going to go through it, though. We're going to go through the article because what I want to show principally with that is the bias that they're starting from. Anytime you put together an analysis, particularly when you're trying to put forth some sort of factual perspective, you can't have this sort of overt implicit bias in it from the very beginning and have people take you seriously. And yet that's exactly what they have. And that's what I'm going to show this morning. But the other thing we're going to be talking about is Geode, the new rock species in the High Republic, Disney Star Wars High Republic era that they've introduced us to. Is completely ridiculous. And the latest drama concerning Kathleen Kennedy, and specifically what was not said by Bob Chapek in that interview when he talked about Gina Carano and Kathleen Kennedy. We're going to talk, there's an article by Pirates and Princesses that I think hasn't gotten nearly the attention it should because they pretty much verbalized my perspective on it when I heard the call and the language that Bob used to respond to the question. To me, the questions he was he was given seemed staged, as were his responses to sort of quickly address fan issues and then put them aside. That's a common tactic when companies are in this kind of trouble. And it wasn't definitive as much as some people are saying it's definitive. Kathleen Kennedy's here forever. His comments weren't definitive at all, actually. And we'll get into that in just a second. The in plain sight crap, the raggedy lies from Rewriting Ripley, we're gonna get to last. Because I'm gonna give people some time to get in here. And then we will address that last. But I'm gonna talk about the rock first. William says, I can only stay for 30 minutes tonight or thereabouts. It's early and I'm tired. Okay, that's fine. I may leave this video up a little bit. I tend to private them after, but I may leave it up a little bit because it's going to be a little bit before I get to the Ripley article. I want to start with this rock situation because it's ridiculous. It's utterly, like, it's crazy. And I don't know if it's a joke. But it feels like one. It feels like a joke. So let me share my screen. And the reason why I'm sharing it this way is because the website that it's from wanted me to, like, I don't know, unblock them or something. I don't know what they wanted me to do, but I wasn't going to do it. So I just basically transferred it to a PDF. Joachim Stark, ready answers on Post-it notes. Exactly. Hello, Cross Purposes. Hello, thank you for the $5 Canadian. You have been visited by the Saturday morning Jayne Fairy. A pleasant weekend will come to you, but only if you comment, hey guys, in the chat. Thank you, Cross Purposes. Thank you so much. Sven, the Naked Nordic Ninja, says the group that they attacked with this should lawyer up and sue them. Even if they can't win, it's not about the money. It's about sending a message. I agree wholeheartedly. All of it, I would go so far as to say all of the channels and brands that were targeted by this hit piece should absolutely sue them. But what we're going to point out is how clever they are in trying to affiliate these groups with quote unquote white supremacists without actually calling them that. It's almost like they knew not to go quite that far, but they're presenting it as if they are. It's very slick. It's very underhanded. But I want to talk about this rock first because here's the thing. This is the dumbest thing they could come up with. It's the dumbest, stupidest concept in the history of Star Wars characters, and I'm talking specifically main characters because this is a main character. This isn't just something they encounter along the way. He's a so-called navigator and principal character, supposedly, in one of their introductory novels. Okay, I'm not going to read the entire article because there's another point I want to make here, but this is what they say in this article. Meet the crew of the vessel. The vessel being the actual vessel, and that's also the name of the ship. It's co-piloted by Affie Hollow. Affie Hollow. That's this girl here. Okay? The black girl. It's co-piloted by her, and it's navigated by a rock. Now, let me be clear. This first paragraph where they describe this rock is how you actually encounter it in the book. This is what you are told about in the book. The book is Into the Dark. That's the Claudia Gray novel. I think it's the second novel in the series. But it's called Into the Dark. And what it says is this. But all conversation came to an end as Leox and Appy stopped their group at the edge of the cockpit. And this here, Leox said with a grin, is our ship's navigator, Geode. Standing in one corner of the cockpit was a rock, about as tall as and slightly wider than Wreath himself, dark gray with round edges and a flinty, flaky surface. Impressive as rocks went. That's how we're introduced to this thing. And when I tell you there may be, I will be generous, 5 decent references to this thing in the entire novel. It doesn't speak. It moves and no one knows how. It literally just appears randomly in places. The joke, it's Leox constantly makes jokes about it. It's at its expense. We're supposed to believe this is a sentient creature that has feelings, emotions, and purpose, right? But you never see any of that. You never see any of that. I have a video coming out this evening at 6 Central that goes through the history of all the rock species, all of the mineral-based life that we see in Star Wars. And I don't get into what's canon and whatnot because that's beside the point. I'm looking specifically at creative license, at creativity. What differentiates this thing from all of the other rock creatures in Star Wars? And you know what it is? Is that all the other sentient life act like they're alive. It's the most basic thing. Nothing about this thing is alive. They talk to it. They talk about it. They make jokes at its expense. But we only ever see it standing there. There's no explanation about what it is. There's no explanation about its background. It never conveys any information in any way helpful. No, it never conveys any information at all. Everything about it that suggests it's alive comes from the crew. Who could be lying? Like, there's no explanation as to how they communicate with the thing. It's the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest idea anyone could have come up with. And no surprise, the writer didn't come up with it. What? I don't even know if they get into it in this article. I literally just pulled it up because it was on topic. The author, Claudia Gray, credits the creation of this thing to her boyfriend. What she says is that she wanted to create a Chewbacca-like character because her main character talks a lot like Han. So she wanted to have a co-pilot, navigator, whatever, that was like Chewbacca in that he didn't communicate as much, right? Didn't want him to take too much attention away from the main character. So her boyfriend says, why not make it a rock? And she's like, great idea. So she does. She literally makes it a rock. Now, according to Lord Callus, according to him, she's a good writer. And that may be. And that may be. It may be. But if she's written good Star Wars before, what this suggests to me is that she too has given up. And that she's just there. Because okay, let me explain a little bit about how I am with novels. If I like something, if something looks interesting to me, I read it. I'll just buy it and read it. I don't really care who the author is. And if it's a series of things and I like it, I'll get the rest of the series. I've never been the type to pay too much attention to authors, honestly. I don't really care. If it's a good story, it's a good story. If it looks interesting, I'll read it. So I don't know if she has written other stuff that I liked, but I can tell you this, having read this stupid book, specifically because I wanted to know if there was something more to this character. There's nothing more to it. It's a rock. We're not giving anything else. And I can only conclude that she simply wrote it to keep her job and that it's in fact a joke. That's the only explanation. It doesn't, when I tell you there's nothing else to it, there's nothing else to it. That paragraph is probably the longest paragraph in the entire book about the character. I kid you not. That's how bad it is. Tex says, give them time. They'll come up with something more dumb. It's Disney. I would not be surprised. William Wilburn says, I have a chair called Chair. That's literally, it could have been. It could have been the chair. It could have been the chair behind the desk, and it would have just as much impact on the story as this rock did. Sven says, so the rock is basically a space GPS? Yes. Yes. But it doesn't say how it's doing anything. When we first see it allegedly navigating, when we first see it, and this is the subtle, we're going to get, okay. So when we talk about the whole allegation of white supremacy associated with those who are upset about The Last Jedi, we're going to get to that later. But when we get to it, one of the things I noticed that they're defending Disney. Here's the problem. Disney has gone from being overtly and utterly racist to more subtly so. And I feel like this is an example of it. There's a scene where the black girl, Affy, who's just thrown in this for no reason. She literally does nothing, but she's standing there or sitting there. She's sitting there behind the cockpit and they're landing because she's a co-pilot. And the rock is praised for getting them there. Leox, or whatever his name is, the other co-pilot, the star of this story, he praises the rock, not his co-pilot who actually flew the ship, who we see flying the ship, who probably actually navigated it. If we're telling the truth, she doesn't get praise for landing the ship. The rock does. She's sitting right there beside the rock. He gives the rock, thank you, Geode. You're great. Great job, rock. Standing there doing nothing. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We introduce a black character into this stupid story, and she's sidelined by a rock. That's where we are. That's where we are. But I'm supposed to defend Disney and Disney Star Wars. Okay. Zadian Star Shadow says, discount Weeping Angel. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a great comparison because you turn around and it's there. It's moved. Literally, there's a scene where this guy who's on the ship, I forget exactly why he's on the ship, but he's there. And he turns around and there's the rock. It's like, and he's literally thinking, like, where did you come from? How did it move? He didn't hear it moving. This is a rock. It doesn't have legs. It doesn't have feet. So it floats or it potentially rolls or slides. In any case, it's going to make a noise. It doesn't. It doesn't make a noise. The Pedantic Penguin says, God, that's so bad. Making fun of your plot holes doesn't excuse them. Exactly. It doesn't. But to them, it does. Like, this entire thing plays out as a joke. I can't take it seriously. And the fact is, you have people online defending this thing. And I don't know if they're joking. I don't think they are. You have people talking about, oh, this is the greatest character in Star Wars. I love this character. I think it's a big gag. I think that's the only explanation. William Wellborn says, at least Stonehenge gives up its secrets occasionally. Stonehenge is at least carved. It's in a shape. Like, there's something interesting about Stonehenge. There's nothing interesting about this rock. When you encounter it, it's literally a piece of rock standing there. Cross Purposes says Disney's going to retcon Geode into being the real emperor or something. That would subvert expectations. I'm wondering if it can be cloned. Maybe it's a clone. Why not? At this point, why not? It may as well be. Supreme Heretic, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Boyfriend. Exactly, Sven. Whatever you say. Whatever you say. William Welper says Doctor Who did it better with Stones of Blood, the Ogre, Tom Baker years. Yeah. Max Anderson says I tend to pay attention to great authors. I read something somewhere that said the boyfriend came up with the rock character for Claudia. Yeah, that's what she said. Supreme Heretic says, I read a Star Trek novel, Claudia Gray wrote. It was actually good. The only thing I can think of here is that she sold out to woke or believes it herself. It's indefensibly bad. I think that she either sold out or she literally gave up. I do think that there are people in Disney Star Wars who know this is just as ridiculous what's happening in the direction that it's headed, but they're stuck. They're there, so they have to do something, but their heart clearly isn't in it. Because this is, as you say, indefensibly bad. The Pedantic Penguin says, hey, I'm sure his navigation skills rock. Michael Beacom says, morning. The Rock as Navigator reminds me of how they originally used lodestones to navigate the ocean. It might, except I think those lodestones made more sense than Geode. And to think, the Clown World Review says, and to think the person who led Disney into this mess wants to lead our country. Exactly. Roof Korean, hello. He says, what if Geode was some 4D chess experiment from LF to justify calling the fans toxic and create a narrative that fans will complain about everything, so they made a plain rock to test criticism? Perhaps. But that's the thing. I feel either it's a joke or either it was something like that, just basically an insult to fans. I kind of feel that that's what it may be. But either way, it's just, it doesn't make us look bad. It makes Star Wars look bad. And here's one of the things I'm seeing too. So one of the conversations around this, you've seen people attacking our criticism by saying, hey, there were other rock species in the history of Star Wars, and there were. Here's the difference, and I point this out again. I point this out in the video that I'm dropping this evening about this history, about these characters. Every other rock species we've encountered in Star Wars, canon or non-canon, it doesn't matter. Every single one had personality. Every single one had a means to communicate, even if it wasn't immediately noticeable. Take the shard, for example. These were rocks sort of a crystalline species. They didn't know immediately how they communicated, but they figured it out. And what humans did was create technology to aid the communication between the two species. And they adapted droids to allow them to have some mobility, right? And that became very helpful. They became very impactful in the story, and I go into exactly how. But this character is completely different. It does not have personality. It does not have purpose. It doesn't have a way of communicating that we know of, and there's literally nothing about it that we're told other than that it exists. They waste the one good paragraph about it, describing it as simply standing there and looking like a rock. The other thing we learn about it is that you can't pronounce its actual name if you have a mouth. I kid you not. See, this is what I mean. This is what I mean. It's stupid. Supreme Heretic with a $2 super chat. Thank you. He says, you rock, Jayne. Oh, God. Max says, the best people are those going to have you read the book? No, and I would only read it if you paid me £1 million. It's not worth reading. Now, if you want to check out some reviews of the High Republic novels, definitely check out Lord Callus's channel, because he's read them. I think he's keeping up with them all. I think he's going to be dropping reviews of everything. So if you want to know about them, definitely check those out. But there's nothing in this one. There's nothing even remotely interesting about it. Kendrick Coley, hello. He says, are the writers high? Are they high? They have to be. At this point, I kind of believe that they have to be to come up with something this stupid. I want to ask, she says her boyfriend came up with the character. Was he high? To just say, oh, we'll just throw a rock in there. It's just going to be a rock. It's going to move around. Because typically, okay, so I'm working on a novel. Okay, I'm working on a novel. And one of the things that I do, and some people do this, some people don't, but I create a character sheet, right? That talks about the character, their background, their personality, their fears, their hopes and dreams, and all these things, their origin story. You literally get nothing from this character. And that's the other thing too that distinguishes it from all the others. Every other rock character we're introduced to, including Mount Sorrow, because they love to bring up that one. In the first page that it's mentioned, okay, in the first page of dialogue, we learn about the character. We learn something about what it is. We learn about what people think it is, what it does, why it is the way it is. You don't get any of that here. You get nothing. It's a rock. It begins and ends with it being a rock. The Time Prophet, hello. He says, I would only read it rather than have Stephen Walton coffee enema. Yeah, I agree. Storyman Jack with a $5 super chat. Thank you. He says, this is insulting. Claudia Gray should be ashamed. This is childish junk. I read it, but it was a slog. And so, I don't know. Like it for 3-year-olds? Spot on, Jack. Max says, I got around 75% through Light of the Jedi and questioned if Lucasfilm even hires editors anymore. Stuff like Geode should never get past editors. It shouldn't. The Time Prophet says, I created a character sheet when I wrote my novel too. Can you imagine the character sheet for this freaking rock? Can you really? Ruth Korean says, I find it strange that they purposefully avoided explaining Geode at all. Again, probably them reinforcing that statement from the story group guy who said, canon is what you say it is. I couldn't agree more. Because it's just... Michael Beacom says, regarding the writers being high, that is the other explanation. Knew some guys in college who would get wasted to the point where anything was funny and seemed like a good idea. That is absolutely what possibly happened here. I'm not going to say they were high, but I'm going to say allegedly they were. Allegedly they were. How else do you come up with this? And it is suspicious that they don't talk about it at all. It's suspicious that they don't give it a backstory of any kind. And it's a Ventian from Vent. It's a Ventian from Vent on a vessel called Vessel. The lack of creativity associated with this entire thing is mind-boggling because you published it. Like you spent money. You spent money to put out a joke. This could have been a short story. You could have released it like it is an extra little thing thrown in. I've never seen anything this stupid. Geek Time TV, hello. He says, okay, Jayne in chat. Rewriting Ripley is going to do a hit piece on all you toxic alt-right influencers. How dare you knock the Wanna Get High Republic? Oh, God. Oh, we are going to address that. We're going to address that. The Pedantic Penguin says, if you could delete a character and nothing about the story changes, delete them. Chewbacca served a purpose. It gave someone for Han to talk to so he wasn't traversing the galaxy in silence. Yeah, that's the thing. She had Leox. I don't even know if that's how his name is pronounced. It may be pronounced Leo. The X may be silent. I don't know. But he had a co-pilot. He had a whole human being. A cute girl, by the way. He had this cute girl on the ship with him. But they give him a rock as his companion. Who he praises for landing the ship or getting them there when she's sitting right there. This is what sense does this make? Okay, what it could have been, what would have been more interesting, and again, this is where fans can create better stories than they do. What would have made more sense was to have them be a couple. A couple with maybe, I don't know, a kid. You know, that could have been interesting to follow. But no. Nope. I mean, they hardly interact. That's what's really funny is that the two co-pilots they hardly interact on the ship. So you don't really learn much about them either. You don't learn much about the humans either. Storyman Jack says, it's almost so stupid they did it on purpose to troll us. I think that's true. Are they saying that The Rock is more important than the female co-pilot toxicity? They are. That's why I say they are the biggest hypocrites. They're the biggest hypocrites. You have a female on the ship who may as well not be there. She may as well not be there. She serves no purpose. They say she's a co-pilot, but she doesn't get credit for it. She doesn't do anything. The one thing she does try... Okay, so here's another scene. So there's a scene with her and this rock. I don't know why they're always side by side. But there's a scene with her and the rock, and they're trying to explain the Force to another character. And it's they. They say that she and the rock are providing this explanation. The rock isn't talking. The rock is not communicating. Let me be clear. The rock is not doing anything. So we have the first scene where she's sitting there and she has just landed this plane, or the ship, and the rock gets credit. And we have another scene where she's explaining the Force and shares credit with the rock. Do you understand why I can't stand Disney? and Disney Star Wars. I mean, it's bad writing. It's hypocritical. But it's also low-key racist. I mean, let's just be honest. This is the kind of stupid, this is what they do. But we're the racists. No one seems to notice this girl is literally being sidelined by this rock in important scenes, like landing the ship and discussing something as complex as the Force. But this is where we are. I can't. Geek Time TV, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, "Hail Jayne Theory, hail." Yes, Max. Let's not forget the vessel is named Vessel. The vessel is named Vessel. They refer to the rock as a rock, and our only description of the rock is that he looks like a rock. Sven says her and him be different species, and their child has to navigate the intricacies of both cultures, maybe. That might be too hard a subject for these smooth brains to write about. Exactly. Exactly. That could have been really cool to see. That could have been an interesting story. We don't get that. The Time Prophet says the rock is not diverse enough. Could have been a black rock. They do make it gray, which is so funny. It's so funny. It's almost like there's a message there too, because they do emphasize the color of the rock. Storyman Jack says, ultimately what they're saying is that the inanimate rock is better than a character of color, that women are less useful than a rock. None of it makes any sense. It's the insane, it's the most, and that's the thing too, Geek Time. How do we go from the Millennium Falcon, Slave One, Executive Death Star, to the vessel? The vessel. That is what Star Wars has come to. It's been reduced to a main character that is embodied by a rock, a stone, no different from what you have in your yard, except taller. It's taller, and it moves. It magically moves from place to place. See, it would have made more sense if they were going to do this. It would. Okay, let's take their rock. Let's take their rock. They could have explained a psychic connection. You know, maybe it communicates through its mind with them. They can hear its voice, something. That's not explained. Maybe its shape shifts a little bit. Nope. When it moves, can we at least hear it slide across the ground? Nope. Any explanation of where you found it? Nope. How does it press buttons on the ship? We don't see it do anything. Their explanation could be maybe it communicates with the ship. Maybe it's tied in, linked to it somehow. We don't get that either. Was Geode recast? In 2001, he was a black slab. Maybe he was a red slab. Like maybe he was a ginger. The reason that Michael Beacom says the reason the co-pilot does nothing is they're just taking Han, Leia, and Chewie and just painting new faces on them. Leia never flew the Falcon. Well, the thing about it is that this girl, she doesn't really do anything. I mean, she allegedly is a co-pilot, but they just tell us that too, really, because she doesn't get credit for flying it. She doesn't get credit. We can't have ginger boulders. Cavatinho, hello. What happens when they're in a rescue situation and they yell to someone not familiar with the vessel to get the vessel, and the person being rescued asks, which one? That's a good question. Oh, William says, are all those pet rocks we had in the 80s relatives? I didn't have a pet rock. I used to collect rocks. Maybe they were relatives. Gentleman Joker, hello. He says, as a ginger slap, I'm offended by the recast. Oh my God. It's so stupid, y'all. This is the dumbest thing. And I think, you know, it does deserve being called out, because there were some people are saying, well, why waste your time criticizing it? I mean, it's so stupid. Why even bother? I don't know if it's trolling. I don't know if it's a joke, but I do believe that we're consumers. We're consumers of this content, and we should tell the creators of this content when we think it's dumb. We should tell them when we think that what they're doing is headed in the wrong direction or is just trash. We should do that. I think we have a responsibility. Max Anderson says, what happens when they crash? Is the rock strapped in, or does the boulder just kill the crew? That's the other point. That's the other point. It's just sitting. So when you walk in, it's sitting behind the cockpit. So if they have a really bad crash, it literally could kill the crew. It literally could kill the crew. I mean, what is this? Why would you want a big rock on your ship? It's the I don't even understand. The pedantic penguin says, it's alive. Can it die, reproduce? It can reproduce. They do mention that it can reproduce. If it can't talk, how did anyone learn it was a navigator in the first place? A question that remains unanswered. That must have been a great job interview. Right? Oh, God. Geek Time TV says, we've been doing that and called alt-right Yachts for it. We have. The Time Prophet says, did they have to reshape the doorways to be rock-shaped? Well, it's as big as a person. It's as big as a person, so presumably they just, either they slid it in or it floated. They don't tell us how it moves. It made a chat. We're all buying this out of morbid curiosity. Don't bother. When I tell you that paragraph right there that you see on the screen is the longest paragraph about it, that's the longest paragraph about it in the book. It's the dumbest thing. Gentleman Joker says, it could be funny if they treated Geode like Morn from DS9. He never does or says anything, but all the other cast members talk about him like he's a wild man who never shuts up. That's kind of what they're trying to do here. That's kind of what they're trying to do here, but it's not funny. It's not funny. Roof Korean says, it will suddenly have the force when they need to explain everything. Well, they should have just said that. They literally should have just said, yeah, it's force sensitive. Because we have had force sensitive mineral-based sentient creatures. That's a thing. It could be force sensitive. That could explain how it communicates. That could explain how it moves. But they don't even give you that explanation. They give you nothing about it. And that's not okay to do. And you can't say, oh, well, they'll tell us about it in the next book. No, you had an entire book here to give us something and you didn't. So that makes it the most uninteresting main character in the entirety of Star Wars. That's what you end up with. And Max says, if anyone is looking for a good science fiction book not about a rock, I would recommend the Safe Hole series by David Weber. There are actually some good stories in Star Wars about actual rocks that are interesting. So definitely check out my video this evening about that, because there are several really good stories about them. This one just isn't one of them. This one is just so stupid. Introducing teleportation, right? Geek Time TV says, we're going to find out that he was a mere stone back on Dagobah, and Luke imparted the Force to him during training. Oh. Getting it out. Use the Soul Sonic Force. Anyone know a stonemason? Well, that's a question too. I mean, what if it crashes and the stone breaks? Is it dead at that point? I mean, what is this thing? So yeah, that's what I had to say about this creature. It's unfortunate that they've turned it and the entirety of Star Wars into a joke. It doesn't make any logical sense. There's nothing there. If you were thinking about reading the book, don't. I can't recommend it. Especially if you're curious about this character, I can tell you definitively that there's nothing in it. There's nothing in the story that further explains it or why it is the way it is. So if you're thinking about buying this book to read it, to see, surely there's more. Surely it's not just a rock. No, it's just a rock. It's just a rock. It's literally all it is. There's nothing more to it, because I didn't believe it. I actually spent money to get this book because I was just like, no. Surely there's more. I'm missing something. That's why I hadn't really said anything about it. I thought it was, a stupid concept. I was just like, no, it can't be. It can't. There has to be more to it. But no, there isn't any more to it. That's all there is. Sorry. That's literally the extent of it. So, moving on to the next topic. I'm going to jump to Kathleen Kennedy. Okay. I'm going to move to Kathleen Kennedy because that is oh wait, hold on, one more thing. Cavateño Chase says, wait a minute, how much does Geode weigh? They don't tell us. They don't tell us anything about it. But Kathleen Kennedy, so the controversy regarding Kathleen Kennedy this week came up following a stockholders or a shareholders meeting. Geek Time TV said, oh boy, I need a coffee refresher, KK. Yeah, me too. Darth Hester, hello. Max Anderson, KK the Destroyer. Yeah, so Bob Chapek was asked directly about Kathleen Kennedy's future in Star Wars. He was also asked about the Gina Carano incident, and in response to both questions, he didn't really give a direct answer. And we're going to get to the article that goes into that, but I want you to hear specifically the question and his response to it regarding Kathleen Kennedy. So what we're going to go to is that Star Wars girl who who captured it. And I think it was actually, I want to give credit to Lorena Creel because she follows this for everybody. Because we don't. We're not paying attention to this. But she, she's a shareholder and she follows all this craziness. She listens in on it. So this is that Star Wars girl who clipped it. And let's see if I'm sharing it. Here we go. So hopefully you can see this. And hopefully you can hear it when I play it. And this is Disney CEO Bob Chapek answering the Kathleen Kennedy question. Let's go.
Greetings and salutations. Are you guys looking at firing Kathleen Kennedy or asking her to resign and promote somebody like Filoni or Favreau or both as a co-counsel?
Thank you for your question, George. We've been absolutely thrilled that we can have the kind of creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathy Kennedy to run Lucas. And we look forward to having Kathy directing the activities of the entire Lucasfilm organization for many years to come. Thank you for your question. Next question, please.
Greetings and salutations. Are you guys looking at firing Kathleen Kennedy or asking her to resign and promote somebody like Filoni or Favreau or both as a co-counsel?
Are you going to fire her?
Thank you for your question, George. We've been absolutely thrilled that we can have the kind of creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathy Kennedy to run Lucas. And we look forward to having Kathy directing the activity.
We're thrilled to have had her. And we look forward to what she's going to do in the future, right?
Of the entire Lucasfilm organization for many years to come.
We're thrilled with having someone like her. And we look forward to what she does going forward. Look forward to it. Here's what's interesting. He doesn't directly say that she's done a great job. And he doesn't directly guarantee that she won't be fired. That was a very political response. It was a very parsed response. It wasn't a direct answer to the question. It was very diplomatic. And that is where we have the concern. Does this mean that she's in fact going to stay on board? Does it mean that she's going to be disciplined? Does it mean that she's going to be relieved? We don't have a clear answer, but it did give this question, gave him the opportunity to address the incredibly vocal, outraged fans without giving any clear-cut answers. That's what just happened. This is not him rubber stamping what she's done. It's not him standing beside her and championing her. What it's saying is, we're glad we had someone like her around. And we look forward to what she does in the future. It doesn't guarantee she'll be around in the future. It's crazy. Hey, Jay, Drunk 3PO said, should I do a response? To which part? To which thing? Personally, if you're talking about the Rewriting Ripley thing, I would say no for you because they barely mention you. So I wouldn't draw any more attention to it. But the Kathleen Kennedy thing, I wouldn't actually respond if I were you. The only reason I'm responding to it, as a matter of fact, is because there's a point I have to make concerning the video. I don't think you necessarily have to respond to it because, like I said, they mention you very brief, like very brief. I don't even know why you're in it because you don't. The clip they have of you doesn't say anything, and I don't know if you know that you're also mentioned in the article, but so is Tugs. Like of all, it's the stupidest. So they mention a lot of people in the article. And the only reason I'm addressing it at all myself is because one of the brands that they mention is Midnight's Edge, which is the platform for toxic femininity, which I'm a part of. So this is the problem that I have. This is probably, if you take together the Midnight's Edge brand and everyone who's associated with it, and Geeks and Gamers, their primary target, and everyone associated with that, you have an incredibly, probably the most diverse corner of the entire fandom. But they paint this broad brush of everybody being a white supremacist. Let's just, you know what? I'm glad you brought it up. Darth Haster, I'm about to pull it up. Let's just go to that. Because the point here is that we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with Kathleen Kennedy. And for everyone who's saying, oh, she's going to get fired, we don't know that for sure. But for everyone who's trying to use this interview, this question and answer to explain that no, she's going to be there for the far-reaching future, that's not what he said either. I am convinced that this entire thing was staged so that he could get that talking point out where he's neither defending her nor answering the question about her future employment. And now he believes he can move past it. This is something the lawyers would have told him to do. This is literally something that the legal representatives of Disney would have said needs to be staged. This needs to be done. I have zero doubt that that's what happened, that it was staged. All of it, the question and the answer. He was too ready to say it. But let's get to this foolishness because this is going to take the most time. And I do want to address it. So this is the article. Let's get good and comfortable. Like if you don't have your coffee, you may want to grab it. If you want to grab a drink, you may want to grab it. We can day drink about this one. So exactly, Geek Time. I've also done PR work. Yeah, this is exactly what you would have your client do. And Roof Korean too. I do have, by the way, responses from Geeks and Gamers and Ryan linked in the description. So let's go. Let's talk about this foolishness. So, in plain sight, how white supremacy, misogyny, and hate targeted the Star Wars sequel trilogy and won. This is their caption. And the author is Rewriting Ripley. This is what they say. They begin. And by the way, I'm not going to post the video because I'm not going to give them views. But what it says is, white supremacist groups, racist hate groups, or racist hate, and racial slurs. That's what this article contains information about. I promise you it doesn't. So they start off by lying. They start off lying. This article contains information about white supremacist groups, racist hate, misogyny, anti-Semitism, and sexual assault, including quotes and descriptions about rape, racial slurs, and violence against women. It doesn't. It literally doesn't. But that's what they want you to believe, because that's the mindset they want you to have going into this. What this reflects is their bias in the beginning stages of their quote-unquote analysis. This is their bias. So they go on, and this is their introduction. And I'm going to take the most time with the introduction because it lays out their bias. It lays it out. It lays it out. 13 followers. So this is how they start. Yeah. Yeah. The anti-Semitism comes from a Jew, apparently, but yeah. So this is what they say. Since December 2017, pop culture news has been overcrowded with the same narrative. Rian Johnson's Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, has divided audiences. This is not a narrative. This is the truth. In fact, it's not just an actual objective truth. It's the entire premise of your article. What they're going to say later is that approximately 40% of YouTubers talking about the subject don't like The Last Jedi. That seems pretty divided to me. That's the definition of divided. You can't have it both ways. You can't pretend that we're this small little tiny corner of the internet, sort of mind our own business, being mad, and there was no division over this movie, and at the same time claim that we're this huge, dangerous threat on the internet just taking over, shaping minds and opinions of innocent, children on the other. You can't have it both ways. But look at the words they use. Overcrowded. There are too many opinions. There are too many opinions we don't like in the discussion. There's a discussion happening about this movie, but it's overcrowded by an opinion we don't like. How weak are you to criticize the fact that there are opinions out there you disagree with, to suggest that there are too many of them? Either you're weak-minded or you're lazy. It's one or the other. Because you should, regardless of how many other opinions are out there or how many narratives are out there, you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet and say how you feel, and people agree or disagree. See, the thing about YouTubers is that we do at least put ourselves out there and our opinions out there to be critiqued. But you want to sit back and hide and get mad because no one's listening to you. So you create a hit piece like this to get attention. So you're going to get attention. You're going to get what you asked for. And that's going to be in the form of calling out your hypocrisy, your using race in a racist fashion, and the way in which you're manipulating your own data to prove your own bias. That's what we're going to do today. Now, I think it was Michael who mentioned the racism thing. Yeah. So it's not missed on me. Here it is. Michael Beacon says to Max Anderson, racist is their push button response. They've called Jayne, just some guy, Lorena Creole, racist. It's just reflex anytime you disagree with them. And it's also cover for their bad takes. They start off, remember, the very first paragraph talking about, in the caption, talking about white supremacy, racist hate, and racial slurs. Because they understand that people don't like racism. They understand that people don't like racists. So they have to paint this entire community with this broad brush of being racist to silence criticism. Because now if you criticize them, you're defending racists, right? That's how they shape the narrative. You can't just dislike it on merit. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the people they criticize is Mahler. Mahler, who spends hours breaking when he dislikes something, he breaks it down scene, almost line by line. It's really more like line by line. But that's who they, yeah. So this is what they begin by telling us their problem. Their problem is that there is discussion about The Last Jedi, and in their view, it's overcrowded by opinions they don't like. There are too many people in the room, too many people at the table who are expressing opinions they disagree with. Something needs to be done about it. Something needs to be done about it. Something needs to silence these people. They're talking too much. They're saying things we don't agree with. It's wrong. Like, how dare they? So we're going to say they're a racist and then poorly try to prove it. We're going to try to prove it in a poor fashion. So let's see how they try to do it. Let's see how they try to do it. And I'm not going line by line in this crap. This is like, it's a 70-something minute read, they said. I just printed it. So now they acknowledge in their article that to the majority of people, the Star Wars sequel trilogy films are likely, they call fun popcorn flicks. That's debatable. That added little to nothing to the saga overall. Added little to nothing to the saga. You start by acknowledging that it's bad. If it doesn't add anything for the majority of people who watch it, if a film that's a trilogy, that's part of a saga, that has a massive fan base, airs, and to the majority of those who watch it, it adds nothing. Can we agree that it's terrible? That it's a complete waste of time? That the critics are right? Objectively. It's objectively bad. It's so bad you have to acknowledge. You can't even defend it. You can't even defend it. But you're mad at people who attacked it. And not even really attacked it so much as just pulled it apart for being the stupid movie that it is. You're critical of us for being critical of a movie that you acknowledge did absolutely nothing for the saga. It would be different. I would even take this entire article differently if they started out defending the movie. If you started out defending the movie, this is a fantastic movie for all these reasons. It added to the story for all these reasons. It added to the saga. It was a great contribution. These criticisms are invalid. See, that's the thing. You're mad that criticism of this movie, the people at the table critical, that it's that it's overcrowded by negative opinions about the movie, but you then submit to us a negative opinion about the movie, that it added nothing to the saga? Or do you not see that that's the problem? Do you not see that that's the problem? That's literally what people are criticizing the movie about. That's the principal complaint. That's the principal complaint. But here's what they do instead. They say, let's see if it's here. Yeah, Johnson. They credit Rian Johnson by saying, he took a beloved cornerstone of Western culture and turned it on its head, much like Star Wars creator George Lucas had done with the franchise's prequel trilogy. That's not true. That's not a true comparison. This is the beginning of a pattern of behavior I'm going to point out throughout the introduction. These people had the unmitigated gall to compare what Rian Johnson did to George Lucas. I can't even take you seriously now. I can't take this seriously. You have now made a very poor comparison without any justification. They just say that. They say Johnson questions the beliefs and principles of the saga's legendary heroes and lore. The journey of each character is defined by a failure that could have been avoided if characters from different races, genders, and age groups simply communicated with one another. That's what's so stupid about it. That's what's also dumb. The writers didn't have them communicate with one another because they couldn't write dialogue. They couldn't write good dialogue. That's why they weren't communicating. That's why you didn't have characters that should have been together. That's why you took Finn and sent him on a stupid, endless, pointless mission that had nothing to do with the rest of the story because you had bad writers. That wasn't intentional. They didn't know what they were doing. So you acknowledge that this sequel and this film in particular did nothing to add to the saga. And you further acknowledge that the characters failed because they didn't communicate. You credit that as being something intentional, like some underlying message. No, it's bad writing. You're being more critical of the movie than we have been, and you can't even acknowledge it. Can't even acknowledge it. This is then, and this is the next part of this. It's just, they talk about Finn. They have the audacity to bring up Finn. They say, in describing the next generation of Star Wars characters, they describe Finn as a resilient fighter, played by British Nigerian actor John Boyega, who had fought against all odds to free himself from an oppressive regime. That people are so upset that in response, the film has been faced with an organized hate campaign against it. They want to tie criticism of this film to criticism of these characters based on race. Here's the major fail here. Even John Boyega criticized how Finn was treated. Pretty much every YouTuber that they mentioned in this hit piece criticized how Finn was treated. Almost every YouTuber in this hit piece defended John and was upset genuinely with how he was treated. The actor, not just the character and the actor. And we also saw John come out and was critical as well. This is what they want to ignore. This is what they want to ignore. They want to ignore this. We're going to mention, we're going to have the unmitigated gall to mention Finn in defending Disney Star Wars when he himself when John Boyega has been incredibly critical about how his character was treated, about how he as an actor was treated. There's probably a clip from literally everybody in our corner of YouTube, in the entire Fandom Minutes, who has criticized Disney Star Wars for how Finn was treated, how his storyline was completely trashed. You see promise in The Force Awakens. In The Last Jedi, he may as well have just stayed asleep. And in The Rise of Skywalker, is he even in it? Is he even there? He runs around, Rey, and then he's gone. We literally do not even see him in the last few minutes of the film. So explain why. Why are you trying to use Finn, who by any measure was discriminated against by Disney Star Wars in this article? Why would you do that? Why would you use him to defend Disney Star Wars? Because I want to know, what are you defending? He had one of the better arcs. Everybody pretty much in the fandom after The Force Awakens had come up with fan theories that were exceptional, that explained him becoming a Jedi, being trained, like all this fun stuff going on these adventures. We thought he had so much potential. Had so much potential. Could have been the best character in the whole damn thing. Could have led the story. But no, that's not what we get. That's not what we get. Instead, we get a great character turned into a caricature, which is consistent. I've said before, I'm on record as saying that Disney is racist. It always has been. But this is what they're defending. They're calling this community racist, who has really been the most vocal group to point out what was done to this character and what was done to this actor, even before he spoke out against it. But we're the racists. You're defending Disney. That's what you're defending. Let's be clear. Let's be clear here. Let me just take a moment. Because this is what you're defending. You have the audacity to bring up Finn and calling racist an entire group of people who defended Finn against this. But we're the racists. This is what you're defending. You're defending taking this character and reducing him to, where is he? Right down here. Down here. I'm gonna move all of this stuff up. We're gonna move that up here for no reason whatsoever, and push him down there. Make the white dude bigger. Push him down there, under the robot, just under the robot, so that you can barely see him. This is what you're defending. You minimized Finn in the story. Then you minimize him in the promotional material. You acknowledge that the story adds absolutely nothing to the saga. You acknowledge that the failures in the story come from the characters not being allowed to communicate. But you're still defending this. The gun is bigger than Finn. Exactly. Exactly. This is what you're defending. You're defending Disney by calling other people racist. I would have had more respect if you wrote this. When I printed this, I think it came to about almost 90 pages. I would have more respect for you if you took those 90 pages and did an article about how racist Disney is. But instead, you're defending it. You're defending this. You're defending this. Tell me how. We're the racists. We're the racists. Okay. Hey, Darkcaster, going back to bed. See you on the graveyard shift later. Have a good time. Geek Time 2, 90 pages. Yeah, it's about 90 pages. It's about 90 pages. But this is what they're defending. You're defending Disney. You're calling us racist. And you're defending Disney. You're defending Disney.
Wonderful feeling this way. Teach 'em, pale-faced brother, all about Red Man.
You're defending Disney. You're defending Disney.
We've got to save him. He'd do the same for any of us.
Thomas is right. We've got to do something.
And so we shall. I told you those savages couldn't be trusted. Smith.
Disney. This is who you're defending.
Know about the power vested in me. I now pronounce y'all frog and wife. Get to it, Hopalong. Give your lovely bride some sugar. Congratulations.
This is what you're defending. I'm just trying to understand. I want someone to make it make sense to me. Because I can't get it. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Greek Time TV says, nothing to see here, Disney. Yeah. Finn, who could have been an awesome Jedi, we make him like some random nobody who's running around screaming after Rey. We make our first Black Princess a frog during most of the movie. We turn the horror and the tragedy that is Pocahontas into a movie for kids. It's fun. But yeah, that's what you're defending. You're defending, since we're on the subject, I haven't forgotten this. Because this also happened. This has happened recently, where they recast Tiana from a Black girl to whatever this was. That also happened. So, but you make a 70-minute read calling us racist and defending Disney. This is what let's be clear. We're all confused. I think we're all confused about it. So back to the article. Back to the article. Yeah, Geek Time TV. Don't forget about covering up Chad Boseman's face on the Black Panther poster for China. And he's the star of the movie. But we can't. We want to trick you. We can't. We can't show him. We can't show him. This is another good point, Pedantic. All of the POC princesses have much more sexualized appearances than their white counterparts. Jasmine, Pocahontas, Esmeralda. But no, it's we're the problem. We're the problem. So they go on, and this is where we get to the comparisons between Johnson and Lucas is just the beginning of the terrible comparisons they make to leap to their final conclusion. So they go on to talk about, let's see, let me get to it. So then they have to reject the notion that we're fans, right? We're pretty much on the same, keep in mind, we're on the same page. We're on the same page with the movie being bad. They've gave more reason for this movie to be considered bad than we have at this point. But we're not fans. We're mad at it for different reasons, for nefarious reasons. We're mad. Here's what they say. It's not enough to call these people fans simply pushing back against The Last Jedi's themes of diversity or change. Let's start there. Now they've said we're not fans. And they've cast our criticism as pushing back against diversity or change. Diversity or change. Why is that important? Because they're combining two completely different things. No one is pushing back against The Last Jedi or the sequel trilogy because of diversity. Star Wars is diverse and had ample room for more diversity. Nobody's mad about diversity. Pretty much every YouTuber that they focus this hit piece on, again, has defended Finn and said he should have had a much more important role. That's not being critical of a diversity. It is being critical of change. Because you can be critical of change when the change is to something bad. We're critical of change. Keep that in mind. But in order to make their point, they have to combine the two things. Because remember, in the beginning, they were trying to combine criticism of this movie with white supremacy. So they have to keep the narrative going. We're mad, according to them, at diversity or change. So they're going to include whoever they could find who they think represents being mad about diversity. And everybody else who's mad about this saga being a change, or this particular film being a change from the rest of the saga. They acknowledge it doesn't add anything to it. That's different. That's a change. Because every other film does add something to the saga. So if you acknowledge that this one doesn't, presumably, fans should be right about being upset about that change. This is logic. This is logic. But we can, if we're critical about that change, about it being worse than the prior films, about it being a worse story, about it being poorly written, about these being bad characters, then we're being lumped in with people, whoever they could find, if any, who are upset because of diversity. They have to lump the two together. It's the only way their little story that they're trying to tell makes sense. So they're combining whoever they could find who they think is critical of diversity, and literally all of us who have been critical of the negative direction, the terrible direction in which Star Wars is going. They're trying to make the two things synonymous because that's the only way they can. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Culture Casino, hello. Yeah, they really effed up then. So let's go on. So they get into from there. They get into their description of what they talk about in terms of the YouTubers, right? So they talk about, according to their methodology, almost 40% of negative YouTube videos mentioning The Last Jedi are from radical right-wing or alt-right accounts. Let's stop there. Let's stop there. So what have we seen them combined? Diversity and change. They're trying to make it seem as if being critical of change is the same as being critical of diversity. That's the only way they can pull all of us under this umbrella of white supremacy. They have to associate those of us critical of change, of the type of change we've seen, with white supremacists who may in fact not like the movie because of diversity. I don't know. But they have to combine us to make it work. It's the same thing here. They have to look at the criticism as coming from both the right wing and the alt-right. They have to combine the two. I'm a conservative. I don't have a problem with being called a conservative or being called right wing. I don't care. I really don't. It doesn't bother me a bit. I do have a problem with being associated with the quote-unquote alt-right. But as of yet, they haven't even truly defined it, what they mean by that. It's a loaded term too in this article. But just note that in order for this to work, they have to combine people critical with legitimate criticisms of this film that they clearly acknowledge that they share. They have to lump us together with the quote-unquote alt-right, with those critical of diversity. They have to. It's the only way this works. Then, in another example of this continued pattern, we get to blame. We blame. They have to blame it on someone. They have to identify a source, right? So they have to web actual racists together with people who are just fans who are critical. They have to web that together. So how they do it is they try to connect everyone and everything they can think of that they disagree with to none other than Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist. This is literally the source, according to them. According to them, fan backlash, so-called, so they say, is not just fans being critical of the movie, because that's just not good enough. It's part of a larger movement to change and control culture. Linked to Steve Bannon. Never mind the fact that most of the people in this community, especially the younger ones, probably have zero knowledge who this guy is and have no interest in him or in politics whatsoever. Geek Time says, we're witnessing the failure of the educational system, particularly higher education, in one document. Exactly. Exactly. These movies are objectively garbage. This film in particular is so bad, they have to acknowledge its faults, and yet still they have to accuse us of being racist. And like I said, the only way they can do it is to combine legitimate criticism with racism. So they tie it all to Steve Bannon because there has to be politics involved. And they call what they do here, quote unquote, analysis of connected networks. Again, the connection is a figment of their imagination. It's a connection that they make up in their own minds. It's a connection that they started with the intent of creating. Because to them, the opinion held by people in the room about The Last Jedi is overcrowded by people they don't like or people they don't agree with. You have a room overcrowded with opinions they don't agree with, and so they have to tie those who are making those opinions with people they identify as racist and connect them together as if they're the same thing. That's literally what this is. So let's look at the claim. They identified the blame. It's a huge box. Hey, executive producer Sol Leibowitz. He says, Jayne, this is not a hit piece. It's a huge box. Yeah. But badly written and badly argued. William Wellborn says, 2:30 a.m. Sunday morning, and I'm knackered. Good night, Jayne, in chat from Australia. Good night. Good night. So they go on to explain, they asserted blame to Steve Bannon, and they've made their claim. Here's their claim. Their claim, what they're trying to prove, right, is that these networks they've come up with enable hate to spread from white supremacist groups to mainstream YouTubers. That is the claim. They've connected, and again, it's the only way it can work, is if they can somehow connect, quote unquote, white supremacists to YouTubers who have never been associated with white supremacy in any way whatsoever, and in many cases aren't even white. They have come up with this idiocy to tie together what they consider white supremacists with a community of people critical of The Last Jedi that is one of the most diverse fan bases, I would argue, on YouTube. But that doesn't align with their narrative. But that's what they're claiming. And they go on to claim, they go on to identify what their purpose is. And this is the important part. This is the important part. Keep in mind, in the beginning, in the opening paragraphs, they told us that when it comes to the quote-unquote narrative about Star Wars, the Star Wars sequels, it's overcrowded by critical opinions. It's overcrowded by opinions they don't like or opinions from people they don't like. So what is the purpose of this hit piece? What are they trying to accomplish? Well, they're very clear. They want, according to them, to silence those voices. They don't say it that way. This is how they say it. This is how they frame it. They want entities that have enough power to control a narrative to be aware of how hate is designed to manipulate those narratives. This article is a plea to entities that have control have enough power to control the narrative. We're talking Google, We're talking Twitter. We're talking YouTube. We're talking Facebook. Entities, private corporations that have the power to control the narrative. This article is for you. We want you to be aware of who these people are, overcrowding the narrative, overcrowding the conversation. All these people who hold opinions we don't like, we're tying them to racists, and we want you to be aware of them. Why? Because we want you to shut down their channels. We want you to silence their voices. That's what this entire hit piece is about. Never mind the fact that many of these people they're identifying, or quote unquote, I hate the whole people of color thing, but quote unquote, people of color. We're going to ignore that. We don't care. That doesn't fit our narrative. But we have conveniently linked, by simply saying so, Rian Johnson and George Lucas, John Boyega being treated poorly. We're going to ignore that. We're going to ignore the entire racist history of Disney. But we're going to compare those critical of diversity. We're going to link those. We're going to combine those critical of change. We're going to put those under the same umbrella because we're dumb. We're going to say that those critical of change in terms of the story are critical of diversity in the story. Just saying so. No proof. We offer no proof whatsoever. But we're just going to say so. And we're going to combine people who are YouTubers who are on the right, quote unquote, conservatives, with people who are alt-right, just because we say so. We're going to combine those because we say so. Not any proof that they have anything to do with one another, but because we say so, we're going to link them all under the same umbrella. So that we can say that they're all hateful, so that you can be aware of who they are and get rid of their channels. That, they tell you in the beginning, is what this entire thing is about. That's what it's about. Geek Time TV says, to Pedantic Penguin, Geeks and Gamers put up a video last night featuring the diverse and different thinking crew of the channel in response. Geeks and Gamers is incredibly diverse. They have people from every different ethnic background. Midnight's Edge is also a diverse platform. Every group is represented. Men, women, Black, Latina. OG Star Wars is Asian and Native American. That's 2 boxes checked in one person. One person. But overnight, because they are so desperate to silence the fandom menace, essentially, so desperate to silence this particular community that they have to create BS to make it happen. They have to combine completely unrelated concepts under one umbrella, call everybody racist, and then do a hint, hint, wink, wink at major corporations that control the social discourse, suggesting to them that they need to cancel all these channels. That is what this is about. And they tell you so in their introduction. How can you believe anything else they have to say in the rest of the article? You can't. You can't. Typical tactic of propaganda, poisoning the well. Exactly, Crack Rock. So then they go on to outline what's going to be discussed. So they talk about Gamergate because they're still hurt over that. Now listen, Gamergate was way before me. And in fact, way before a lot of people in this community. I don't remember all the details. I've heard about it. I've read about it. I've seen videos about it. I still can tell you about it. Because I don't care. I don't. Most people don't. I couldn't tell you anything about it. But what I will tell you is that they're still mad about it. Whatever y'all did to them, you hurt their feelings. Whatever you did to them with Gamergate, they are still in pain. because they're still talking about it. They're still talking about everybody that was involved in that. Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn. They are in pain. They are mad. But the important thing is not that, because this has nothing really to do with anything having to do with this. What's important here is, one, their analysis of The Last Jedi being polarizing. They say they want to critique after the fact. It's almost like they want to retcon this notion that it was a success. They want to suggest to us that The Last Jedi, no, everybody loved it. What are y'all talking about? So in a very biased fashion, they use Twitter and search words that they develop to come up with conclusions about the people tweeting about The Last Jedi. They create their own biased methodology and then, of course, get the result they want. So you can't give any credit to this so-called analysis. They literally shape it around their preferred outcome. Then so in other words, it's junk. They start out with junk concerning Gamergate. It's completely irrelevant. They get into junk analysis that's incredibly biased. Then they criticize clickbait headlines, okay. Let's pretend that the entirety of media doesn't use clickbait headlines. Is that what we're going to do? And then finally they get to the actual point, I guess. What's really making them mad, why they're so upset. They're upset because their favorite progressive and diverse creatives have been quote unquote targeted. The correct word is questioned, critiqued about things they've said, things they've done, things they've produced. But you can't do that. You can't be critical of creators. We're consumers, but we can't be critical of those who create the stuff we consume. That's racist. We can't look at things they said and be critical of what they're talking about, because that's racist. It's racist simply because they hold different political opinions from us, or it's racist because they're a different race. Never mind the fact that many of the people critical of this thing in our community are what they would call people of color. But if I'm Black and I'm calling out someone who's Black for saying something stupid or creating something ridiculous, I'm racist, apparently. This is where we are. They don't want to have unfettered conversations. They want to control the narrative because, according to them, the narrative or the conversation about the narrative is overpopulated. Is that the word they use? Yeah. Overcrowded. It's overcrowded with opinions they don't like. So they have to get rid of those opinions. They have to get rid of the people who are criticizing their group that has different political opinions and or they believe are protected racial groups, protected from criticism. That's where we are. If you are critical, you're alt-right. I mean, literally, we're going to get to that. Because they don't even define what they mean by alt-right up here in the introduction. They don't define it there. That's where they should define it, but they don't. So then we get to, and we're gonna move. That was the introduction. That was the beginning and end of what this whole nonsense is about. It's literally intended to silence our channels, to silence this community by tying us into racism and white supremacy, simply by their saying so. But then they go on, and this is what they do. So they start with Steve Bannon because he's the problem. They start with, and they have this little chart where they you have to go a mile down to get to YouTubers, but this is what they do. Ben Shapiro, somehow is a white supremacist alt-writer. This is Dom TV 2010. Hello, good morning. He says it's been a crazy morning at work. It's been crazy all week here. So these are the people they combine together for no reason. They don't show us or tell us the actual connection, right? Richard Spencer, apparently a neo-Nazi activist. I don't know if he is or isn't. I don't know. I don't really care, honestly. And keep going. And finally we get to YouTuber. Somehow. This do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's no logic between these connections, but they want to make a connection between neo-Nazis. Ben Shapiro, who's decidedly not a Nazi, and Geeks and Gamers. Can you explain? There's no logic to this. There's no logic against. Spread hate against Lucasfilm employees. So now it's hate to be critical. If you're critical of a movie or you're critical of the creator of that movie, that's hate. They don't know what hate is. Croc says, but Jayne, they have lines connecting them. Right. My goodness. There are lines connecting them. That must mean something. Oh, gosh. And so, yeah, they go on. And let's see. Let's get to the good part. So, okay, here we go. They attribute to Bannon this quote-unquote culture war, right, against progressive politics, because you can't just be against progressive politics. It's like they want to acknowledge the common sense fact that America has a population of people that have differing opinions, that are conservative, that are left and right, roughly equal. How can you acknowledge that that's a thing and then act surprised by it and want to attribute it to one singular individual? Bannon is not responsible for people being critical of progressive politics. It's progressive politics. So obviously half the country is going to agree and half the country's not. That's how politics works. It's almost like they think if you disagree with them politically, there is inherently something wrong with you. They can't fathom that they could be wrong. They can't fathom that they should be criticized. If you criticize them, there's something wrong with you. You must be racist. This is how crazy this is. The pedantic penguin says Spencer most definitely is a white supremacist. Robot Head is not. So does that mean every movie AOC likes is well done? Apparently. Geek Time TV says Eric July says anyone to the right of Bernie Sanders is now called alt-right. He's spot on. Michael Beacom says differing opinions equals wrong opinions and they need to be corrected. Or in this case, not even corrected. Eliminated. Eliminated from the discussion because the discussion is overcrowded. We who are minding our own business on our own channels, saying what we want to say, we're bothering them apparently because we dare exist and have an opinion they don't like. But this is where they get into finally describing what they mean by alt-right. So to them, alt-right ideas consist of this. Okay, wait, are you ready? Alt-right ideas consist of ideas of white supremacy. Okay, fine. I'll buy that. I'll buy that part. White supremacy, bad. It's terrible. We all agree. But what do they combine with it? What do they combine with it? Being anti-identity politics and being anti-liberal journalism. You can't just be anti-identity politics and or anti-liberal journalism, and they're not tie that to white supremacy. They have to combine the two. It's the same. You've noticed the pattern, right? If you're critical of change, that means you're also critical of diversity. You can't just be one. You can't just be critical of one or the other. If you are on the right, then you have to also be alt-right. You can't just be on the right and have an opinion. It has to be shaded by racism. You can't simply bemoan or criticize change in culture. You also have to want to control it. You can't just be a mainstream YouTuber. You also have to be tied in some way to a white supremacist if you disagree with them. And now you can't simply talk about identity politics and liberal journalists and have a critical opinion of them without also being a white supremacist. This article would have been incredibly shorter if they just separated out the white supremacist part. Like if they kept it to just white supremacy or racism, just that, and kept out YouTubers critical of the movie because it's a bad movie, YouTubers critical of these creators because of things they did and said, YouTubers critical of identity politics, YouTubers critical of left-wing journalism. If they took all of that and conservative YouTubers just out, if they just took us out and put us over somewhere else and just focused on those who are actually racist, this thing would have been a page long. It would have been a page long because they spend all of their time trying to stuff our little corner of YouTube under the umbrella of white supremacy. It's the only way it makes sense. It's the only way they can push those entities that control the narrative, their words, the only way they can push them to be aware that we exist so that they can remove all of these platforms from the public sphere. So then they do this next thing where they get into the timeline of outrage media. I'm going to blow past this nonsense. So like I said before, they get into Gamergate, which has absolutely nothing to do with anything. They do mention, I will take note that Paul Booth, a professor at DePaul University, explains that today, angry internet mobs routinely use the threat of rape, bombings, and assassinations as a way to lay claim to whatever it is they think they're losing. So they throw in lines like that. They throw in things like that, right? Actual bad things. But never mind the fact that, again, none of the YouTubers they mention have done that. Mahler's never threatened to bomb anybody. Well, what are you talking about? None of the YouTubers they identify have done this, but they throw it in there anyway because they have to pull everybody under the umbrella of being threatening boogeyman racists, white supremacists, simply for being critical. You're alt-right, not just if you're a white supremacist, but if you're critical of identity politics, which is a legitimate criticism as a political approach to resolving racism, if you're against left-wing journalism, which is a reasonable position to take, you're going to be lumped in with white supremacists. That is how insane these people are. This is how they think. This is how they think. And this is exactly what is in this article. This is exactly how it's set up from the very beginning. They tell you in the first few paragraphs that this is what they're going to do, and they carry it throughout the article, the so-called analysis. It's not. It's incredibly biased. They have their end game in mind when they started this, and that's where they conclude. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're up against. Michael Beacom says, have to go now, but we'll listen in the car. Have a great day. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you so much. You have a great day as well. Hey, Mr. Tickle Chunk. So yeah, that's, again, they throw in these things that have nothing to do with the YouTubers in question to prove their point. And, you know, again, I'm just hitting the highlights, but you can go through this if you want to. But I want to hit some of the highlights because there are things I want you guys to focus on. So they get to white nationalism. Now, here's what's funny. So they cite an analytics firm. They cite an analytics firm called Physiology, which reported 6% of tweets were considered racist. So you mean to tell me that you're attributing, according to you, it's all racist, but arguably 6%, let's just say 6% of tweets were racist. That's what you want to focus on? Is that why we're here? Really? Because that's insane. That shows you just how far they're willing to go. Again, their own article can be pulled apart. Their own article can be pulled apart for the nonsense nature of it. But 6%. But this is, every hashtag is racist. There were some white nationalists who quoted it. There were some white nationalists, there were some racists in the bunch who used the tag to say racist things. So what we're going to do is combine everybody who said something critical because they dared use the same tag, because that's 6%. And we're just say they're all racist. All of them. 6%. 6%. I would even, you know what? I would give them that. I haven't looked at the data, but I would say, as messy as Twitter is, as terrible a place as it is, I can believe 6% of tweets were racist. Okay, so what? You can't attribute everybody who used these hashtags that were anti this movie or anti the sequels. You can't claim that we're all racist simply because 6% of tweets were. But that's the logic. They have to tie criticism to racism, even if it's an incredibly weak tie. So they go on and they look at the different uses of the tag. Now, one of the tags, let's see. One of the tags was boycott Star Wars 7. And maybe these are some racist tweets. Okay, so what? That's not everybody. And then you have here someone pointing out the quote unquote good guys versus the bad guys, right? And simply pointing out that the quote unquote good guys were quote unquote minorities and the bad guys were white males. Pointing that out is racist. Pointing that out is racist, apparently. But here's what's crazy. You even have to twist this to make it so. For one, Finn was turned into a caricature. I don't know that you can really consider him a good guy because he doesn't actually do anything. Poe is as white as any of these people down here. I'm sorry. I understand he's from Guatemala, but he's also white. He's as white as anybody down here. And you had the female character, which you were going to have anyway. And Lupita barely gets it. Lupita's role is diminished in this saga. Her character achieves absolutely nothing. Does nothing. In fact, the two black characters do absolutely nothing in this movie. This is the worst example. If a white racist posted this, he's actually arguing, he's making a good argument. For black people, actually, that these two characters were given terrible stories. Terrible. Poe's story was undermined as well, as a matter of fact. And Rey was a Mary Sue. But this is what they cite. Like these are the best examples they have of racism, right? These are the best examples of racist of that 6%. So then they go on to, let's see. Okay, so they talk about, again, they're trying to control this narrative. They're trying to promote this idea that The Last Jedi was actually good. They acknowledge the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. 42%. They acknowledge that would suggest that fans are polarized or at least divided in their opinion of the movie. But that can't be enough. There has to be some negative reason. It has to be because of racism. It can't be because 42% of fans just didn't like it. It couldn't be just 40% of the audience find it to be terrible. Terrible writing, terrible character development. Maybe that 40-something% agree with them that the movie simply added nothing to the saga. But that's not enough. That's not enough. Now, keep in mind, this is interesting. 42%, remember they said 40%, roughly 40% of those YouTubers critical, or it's 40% of YouTubers who are critical of The Last Jedi. And as it turns out, what a coincidence, 42% of the audience is critical of The Last Jedi. Could it be that 40% of fans just don't like it? For good reason? Because they watched it and didn't like it? Could it be that these people aren't racist, aren't reflected by the 6%, and they simply don't like leftist politics, this whole race-based agenda that they want to insert into everything? Maybe people just want good writing. Maybe they just want good fully developed, well-rounded characters. Maybe they just want a story. Maybe they don't want a trilogy that doesn't add anything to the saga. Maybe they agree with your criticisms of the movie. But you have painted with a broad brush 40% of YouTubers who are critical of the movie and the 40% of the audience is critical of the movie, and try to tie them in under the same umbrella as the 6% of Twitter users who you say said racist things about it. There's literally no logic in any of this crap. It's the most, first of all, this entire quote unquote study is biased. I think we've established that. It's illogical. It's utterly nonsensical. And it's defamatory trash. And I do hope people call their lawyers on Monday and send some letters to these people, at the very least. At the very least. Hey, theme park casual. Let them have it, Jayne. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it's so clear. It's so obvious what they're doing. It's so obvious what they're doing. And my purpose in doing this is not necessarily even to go through the substance of what they're saying, so much as pointing out how they're shaping this nonsense and how they're doing it to achieve their purpose of trying to deplatform people, because that is solely what this is about. This is what they say it's about. They're very clear on that from the very beginning paragraphs to the very end. The Time Prophet says, I think all people are slightly racist. From the moment we're born, we see differences in people. Sometimes it's just ginger hair, but we notice differences. Doesn't mean we're bad people. I would say, I think humans have inherent biases or prejudices, but I don't think it's race. I don't think racism is a word I would use. I would probably say I think people are inherently tribal. I would say that people are inherently tribal. I don't think it's racist, though, because race isn't real. It's not only is it not real, it's never been consistent. And it's never made any logical sense. I mean, even in how people choose to use it, there's no logic to it. It doesn't make any logical sense. Just like we saw a minute ago. Oscar Isaac. They took him out of the category of white men. Why? Can you explain that to me? Again, it's stupid. Even racists can't get it right. So I wouldn't say that everybody's racist. I would say that people tend to have biases in favor of what's familiar. And people tend to be tribal with their particular community. Just like I get into Louisiana a lot, our history and our culture. And one of the things after the Civil War, there was this sort of divide between, I guess what you would say, native Louisianans and everyone else. Even though native Louisianans constituted probably the most diverse body of people in America at the time. Like you had, this is truly the melting pot here. I don't know. I could be biased. I don't really know the makeup of other states, but I know here we had so many different cultures blend so incredibly well. And when Americans came here, particularly after the Civil War, when Americans arrived in waves after the Civil War, there was a distinct difference between them and all of us. Like there was a distinct difference between white Americans, coming into Louisiana, and all the Louisianans regardless of race. So culturally, we were much more similar than any of us were to people, white or even Black Americans who came into Louisiana. Were very different from Black Louisianans. And so that's why I say that the race part doesn't really, it just never made sense. Culture is so much more real and much more substantive than race. But people forget that. People forget, for example, that in Louisiana, it was white Americans who were forcing French-speaking Louisianans, white and Black alike, to stop speaking their language. That's why many people in Louisiana don't speak French. And even those who do speak, you do have more French immersion that sort of developed in the last couple of decades, but a lot of those who do aren't completely fluent. And it wasn't always that way. Our ancestors were fluent. And there was just this period where it was prohibited, where if you spoke French in school, for example, you would get beaten. You would get beaten. And so a lot of communities, a lot of families lost that. The Louisianans didn't give up our unique culture and language and all that stuff voluntarily. That happened in other communities. In parts of northeastern United States, you had people come over who were Jewish or Irish or Italian, and their goal was to assimilate. So their children didn't learn Gaelic, or they didn't become fluent in Italian, because they were American, and that's what they came here to be, and that's what they wanted to be. That was their goal. So they had to assimilate. That was not Louisiana's story. When the Louisiana Purchase happened, people were upset. And when the Americans came here and started imposing their own culture, a lot of who and what we were was erased against our will. So that's just something it's off topic a little bit, but I just want to throw that out there. Crack says, I have slight prejudice now, but it's because, oh, great, is this person going to try to use identity cards on me? I guess. I've never been a believer in this idea that someone can make someone racist or prejudiced. I think that's an idea, because I've heard that a lot. People say, oh, well, if y'all keep doing this is going to make people really racist who weren't racist before. Like, you heard that a lot during the Black Lives Matter thing, where people were like, oh, this is gonna, if you weren't racist before, I think that's kind of nonsensical. I think that's kind of stupid too, because either you are or you aren't. It's not, when you're talking about actual racism, that's not something you can turn on and turn off. Like, that's thinking, really believing to your core, that's a hardcore belief that you're inherently superior. It's a delusion. It should be classified as a mental illness, really, if we're honest. But that's very, you don't just turn that on and off because of what other people do. Like, that's just a belief that you have based on nothing. Prejudice, I guess maybe you can develop that, but I don't. I've seen, I'm Black. I've seen white people do some crazy stuff that's racist. I'm not going to judge all white people based on it. That's insane. Nor am I going to become prejudiced against all white people just because some white people have done stupid things. To me, that's crazy, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. The Pedantic Penguin says, ending up marrying someone of your own race isn't racist. Racism is judging someone who doesn't. Yeah, that's time, or you know what's really interesting? There was a thing trending not too long ago. Was it last week? Um, it was something like "Give white men a chance" or something like that. That was trending on Twitter, and it was the whole thing was like Black women who had been told, "Oh, you're undesirable. Oh, nobody wants you. Blah blah blah. Nobody's attracted to you. You're not, the European standard of beauty." So, by the way, told this mostly within the Black community, but so Black women started coming on here talking about, give white men a chance, like, date outside your race, whatever. Expand your options. And people were mad. People were outraged. Now I do mean Black people. So there's also this sort of weird, when you talk about people criticizing people for not dating their own race, a lot of that's internal. A lot of that's internal, like intra-racial racism. Let's see. The Time Prophet says, isn't Louisiana mainly a French colony? I mean, yeah, it was. French and Spanish. Mr. Tickletrunk says, look at SJW versus anti-SJW. Those both function like tribes. Everything SJW say is dismissed without thinking, and anti-SJW ideas are instantly dismissed by SJWs. I think that's the extreme, though. I mean, I'm critical of SJW nonsense, but I will say that I will at least try to see if I can understand some perspective, if I can pull something that makes sense out of what they're trying to say, I will. I don't dismiss them offhand. I really don't. Even this article, the whole reason I read it was to see what is happening. Like, how did they come to this conclusion that these YouTubers are white supremacists? And they don't. The only way they achieve it is simply identifying white supremacists and those people critical of The Last Jedi and using a marker to draw a line between them and put them under the same umbrella, using nothing, no facts, just because we say so, they're the same. That's literally what is in this article. That's literally how they structure it. That's why I focus on the structure. So I don't dismiss them off. I don't just say, oh, all SJ, they're just all crazy. I really don't. I mean, I did a little bit with my last tweet about them on Twitter, but I was upset. But I generally don't. Because I don't believe in it. I don't think you should just generalize people. Any group of people. Honestly. I think that's crazy. But see, then here's the other thing too, because that doesn't hit all the high points. I also wanted to mention this. So let's go down a little bit. According to one of the accounts, the film was bad because the creators behind the film lost their way from the hero archetype. And they claim there isn't much explanation on what this means. So now they're feigning ignorance. This is the next stage, right? So in terms of structure, they've set up their argument by combining things that aren't alike. Okay, so now, before they start, they've combined things that aren't alike under the same umbrella, the white supremacists and everybody else they disagree with. So now they're looking at the people they disagree with, and they have to say, well, they're not giving it, they're saying one thing that seems perfectly sensible and objective, but they really mean that they're racist and sexist. they're really racist and sexist. They're saying that it's poorly written, but they're really just being racist and sexist. Here's the problem with that. They're highlighting YouTubers who are very specific about what they're being critical about. They actually do provide an explanation. But they also throw in, again, you may have been able to kind of make this work if you hadn't thrown in Mauler. You would have to exclude all of the YouTubers who do provide in-depth explanations for their criticism, but most especially Mauler. Like, you can't include him in this. You can't pretend, because they're being intellectually dishonest here now. Now they're being petty. Now they're just playing games. At first, it was just, we're going to draw a line between all of these people we think are racist and everybody else. And now they're looking at the everybody else and saying, look, they have legitimate criticisms, but they're really secretly racist because they don't provide an in-depth explanation. But we're going to ignore the fact that Mauler provides line-by-line criticism, explanation, and suggestion for how it could have been done better. They're intellectually dishonest. So they have a completely biased purpose and agenda, which they make very clear. Their agenda is not hidden at all. They want to deplatform these YouTubers. They connect them artificially, superficially, not even superficially, completely artificially to white supremacists just because they say so. And now they're looking at the YouTubers and other people on Twitter who are critical of The Last Jedi, who present decent, reasonable arguments and say, no, they're secretly racist. They're secretly racist. It's not clear, but it must be. It must be that they're actually racist. So that's the next thing they do in this thing. And then they talk about their methodology, which again, it has to do with a method they create based on keywords they come up with. So they completely have the sole power to shape the narrative of this article and get the results that they want because they are defining the terms literally. Literally, that's the methodology. So it's a flawed methodology from the beginning. And they go through showing you, all this word matching based on words they choose to get the results they want. You can look at that if you like, but it's again, stupid and completely and totally biased. So they spend all of this time doing this. Again, all of that's biased because they literally are shaping the outcome with word matching that they choose. Okay, and then we get to, again, some more tweets that they don't like. And they get into more wordplay. As you can see here. Now, I do find this is where the YouTubers and stuff gets into it. Alt-right recruitment. It's all alt-right. Again, more word games. Okay, and so then they start looking at the YouTube thumbnails. Let's see what you guys have to say. Not Pepe, says Craig Croc. The Time Prophet says, I don't think you have a right not to be offended. Nobody does. So yeah, then they start looking at, these are the examples from these YouTubers that they're trying to use to promote this narrative that they've created. Okay? So you have a lot of posts having to do with Trump. either being supportive of Trump or being critical of those who criticize Trump. The Quartering posted a video, and this, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but he posted a video that says Democrats demand Trump be banned from Twitter and massive censorship continues. This is what they're using to show that the far right are critical of The Last Jedi and are therefore alt-right. Again, you saw above where they created the structure where where if you are on the right, you are inherently alt-right. Never mind that these are two different things. If you don't hate Trump, you are for white supremacy. If you don't like leftist politics, you're a white supremacist. You're categorized along with them. If you don't like identity politics, you are categorized along with white supremacists under the label of alt-right. It is virtually impossible then to exist as a conservative and not be alt-right by that definition. They use their own definitions to conveniently lump together legitimate white supremacists and people who simply have a different political opinion or a different take on this stupid film. And they're linked together because they say so. Those are the parameters they put in place. That's the structure of this entire quote unquote analysis. If you are conservative to any degree or you dislike The Last Jedi, you are inherently alt-right white supremacist. Never mind the fact that you're Black or Hispanic or Asian or Native American or whatever. So this is literally all they do, and they go on through it. If you're critical of anything having to do with modern day Disney Star Wars. Okay, and so here's the other thing too. It's obvious that in Hollywood right now, you are seeing straight white male characters being presented in a very disparaging manner. You have people hired by Star Wars, Disney Star Wars, who have said incredibly racist things about white people generally. That is a thing that has happened. But if you've responded to that, or if you're critical of it, you're inherently racist yourself. That's the other thing that they're presenting here. Simply, in Ryan's case, talking about what some of their writers have said, or the people they associate with have said about white people, that's racist. Now, mind you, if you are Black like myself, and you acknowledge that the very same thing is happening, as I think Lorena has also done, a couple Black people in the community have, then they conveniently ignore that. They conveniently ignore our opinion on it, which is also inherently racist, but here we are. They want to focus on just these voices to make their point. They want to ignore Mark with a C. They want to ignore Lorena. They want to ignore myself. They want to ignore everybody else, or just make assumptions about the community as a whole and suggest to people that you don't have a right to be upset because of how people who look like you are being treated. It's ridiculous. So you're telling me by the same narrative, all the videos I've created, and Lord knows I've created quite a few, talking about how Black characters are represented by Hollywood. And I think I even have a video titled Hollywood Doesn't Care About Black People. I mean, by this logic, is that also racist? I mean, I also have a video that says Hollywood doesn't care about white people. So I don't know. Is one racist and one isn't? Is that what this is? You can't just be, yeah, Eric July as well. Eric July as well, too. The most vocal of all. You can't just, again, be critical of characters and be critical of writing and be critical of how these characters are being represented and how they're being treated, how they're being written, how badly it's being done without being a racist. Because they want to be able to say whatever they want about you and use you however they want to suit their agenda without you being able to say anything in response. They want us all silenced. That is the goal. And they say as much in this hit piece. So you can't be pro-Trump. You can't be pro-Trump. You can't acknowledge and be critical of things that are racist against white people. You can't criticize Black Lives Matter. And God forbid, if you criticize race swapping, you're racist. If you criticize race swapping, you're racist. So I get, considering my channel, that's pretty much it's pretty much every other video, because that's what they're doing now. I guess I'm just queen racist because there's no, every other video of mine is talking about this at this point. But yeah, that's it. It's racist. Yeah. So all of that, can't do that. Now here's the other thing. If you talk about how incredibly stupid Captain Marvel was, if you didn't like Captain Marvel, then you're not racist, but you hate women. You're misogynist. You're a misogynist. You're a sexist. You hate women. You hate women. Mr. Tickletrunk, thank you for the $2 Canadian dollars super sticker. It's a little corgi with hearts. Thank you so much. Time Prophet says they don't need to race swap, just make a new character. Make a new character. You could, write something, good stories about existing characters. There's so many options. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. And if you call them out on it, you're racist. If you call them out on badly writing female characters, you're sexist. It's just, you can't win. You just have to sit down and shut up. You have to just be quiet and accept it. And if you don't, they are going to say that the room is overcrowded with your opinions. And they're going to appeal to entities that control the narrative to silence you. That is what this entire article is about. And so that's why they're providing examples, because they want Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all these entities to see these names and these accounts and everyone affiliated with them in some way so that they can be removed from these platforms. That is the entire purpose of all of this. So let's go on, continue looking at it. Okay, you can't be critical of the force being female. Can't be critical of any of that. Robot Head. Again, Geeks and Gamers. Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy. Can't be critical of her. Or you hate women. You hate women if you're critical of Kathleen Kennedy. This is where this is wow. So, and then this is the slick thing that they do. This is the slick way they go about it. So they identify the top 10 YouTubers mentioning Kathleen Kennedy by number of videos. So they, in an indirect way, they're trying to identify the channels that they want to get rid of, that they want to silence. So without calling them racist directly, they subtly include them under that umbrella by this particular method. And yeah, exactly, Crack Rock. Anna is all right. Anna. So they include Mike Zero, Geeks and Gamers, Midnight's Edge. They include Geeks and Gamers and Midnight's Edge as alt-right. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. If you look at everybody, and this is what I said earlier, if you look at everybody under the Geeks and Gamers umbrella and everyone affiliated with Midnight's Edge, which includes the Toxic Film crew, you're easily talking about the most diverse corner of the Star Wars fandom. Easily. But because in order for this to work, they can't just out and say these people are white supremacists. They have to say they're also critical of identity politics and critical of leftist propaganda or leftist politics. You have to include those two things along with white supremacy to make this work. You have to combine those three things under the definition of alt-right for this to work at all. And that is exactly what they did. Never mind the fact that one has literally nothing to do with the other two. Nothing to do with the other two. But what you want to do is cast communities of people who include literally every race, male and female, Black and white and Asian and Native and Middle Eastern, all together, and Latina. You want to categorize all those together as alt-right because that's the level of stupidity that you're dealing with. That's the level of ignorance. You're not even shocked at this point. After I've shown you their narrative, their purpose, what they're trying to achieve, and how they've structured their argument, this was inevitable. It's inevitable that this is what they're trying to do. And so they've included, in addition, Clownfish TV. Like, that doesn't even make sense that they would name them here, knowing that by doing so, they're associating them with racism and with white supremacy. And they include Ryan and that Star Wars girl, Anna. No. The only way this works is they establish this framework whereby everyone critical of everything they love is forced under the same umbrella as white supremacists. By no facts at all. The only connection is their own say-so. So who else do they put in harm's way or put in the target of this? Well, first of all, they talk about the profitability of hate. the profitability of being critical, maybe. So who else did they bring in? Who else did they talk about? Well, they already talked about the quartering and Geeks and Gamers because, of course, they did. But they also bring in the critical drinker. How? Really? The critical drinker. They had the audacity to name him in all of this. Nerdrotic. Mauler, a proponent of hate. Someone who takes his time and is meticulous about his criticism. He doesn't just criticize anything all willy-nilly. Of everybody, literally of everybody in this list. Mauler presents the best, most thorough arguments against anything he talks about. But he's a proponent of hate. Again, they throw in Midnight's Edge, which again, you're talking about an incredibly diverse crew. World-class bullshitters, Overlord DVD, Anna, for some reason, Drunk 3PO's on the list, Jay's on the list. Okay. A member of the Dark Council is on this list as a proponent of hate. Do you see how ignorant this is? Do you see how little homework was done in preparation for this madness? This is, and by the way, they're talking, this is under the section of profitability. So you understand they did not have to include the smaller YouTubers, right? Because that's not profitability. If we're going to go there, if we're going to talk about profitability, you need to focus on those who are actually making significant income. Significant income, because I'm sorry, maybe it's just me. And I don't want to sound, let me see. How am I going to word this? I don't want to sound elitist, but I don't consider profitable something that's not really making good money. And what I consider good money is 6 figures or more. So why are you including in terms of profitability to prove that people are just making money hand over fist? People are just taking advantage of hate, or at least let's just say criticism of this thing to make money, criticism of this movie, criticism of the franchise, criticism of the sequels, criticism of the creators. If you're going to focus on people who are using Disney Star Wars to make money, you need to focus on people who are making money. And that might be the Quartering, Geeks and Gamers, Critical Drinker, Clownfish, Nerdrotic, Mauler, Midnight's Edge. I will give you Comic Artist Pro. Maybe, okay. Overlord DVD, according to this, is bringing in somewhere between 66,000 and 110,000 a year. Oh no, lifetime. Listen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's not a lot of money. That's not a lot of money. If what they're saying, let me read this again. So using this range, they say I can estimate the amount of money that 20 anti-The Last Jedi YouTubers from above have made in the lifetime of their channel. This does not include any money made from merchandise sales or Patreon subscriptions, which tend to be more lucrative than what the average person can make off of YouTube ad revenue. They're estimating this is lifetime earnings. Lifetime earnings. This is not profitable. These people aren't killing it talking about The Last Jedi? You're telling me that in the lifetimes of their channels, they've made about as much as someone with a good job makes in a year. They shouldn't have even put this in here. It undermines their argument. And then to include smaller YouTubers, like they have Orion at between 28,000 and 47,000, down to Drunk between 6 and 11, and then Bounding into Comics less than $5,000. These people are making a killing. These people have to work for a living. They have to keep their jobs. These people they have not sat back and just decided they're going to live off of YouTube. This undermines your point. But I'm not surprised. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of this chart is not to suggest that these YouTubers are making a killing off of being critical of The Last Jedi. The entire purpose of naming these people in this list is because these are channels they don't like, and they want to throw them under the umbrella of white supremacists. That's the literal only point. There's no other reason to drag in smaller YouTubers. The only reason is that you don't like them because you don't like their opinion. And you want them silenced. So you know these corporations generally are not going to pay attention. They're not going to do their homework either. And they'll just see the names and conclude, okay, these people are problematic. Have to get rid of them and potentially deplatform them, which is what you're asking for. Because none of these people are making, honestly, none of these people are making a lot of money, with the exception of the Quartering Geeks and Gamers and Critical Drinker. If these are the lifetime earnings of their channels, no, I'm sorry. It's envy, but it's also, why are they being envious? It's like this is stupid. It's stupid. So what do they have a problem with? Well, they focus on geeks and gamers and they say what they're critical, what they don't like, what they're trying to stop, what they're trying to silence is this: expressing criticism of feminist agendas, expressing criticism of people saying racist things about white people, expressing pro-Trump sentiment, being critical of feminist propaganda. But they throw in white supremacist ideology. It's not there. It's not there. But they have to, they can't do it without it. They can't make this point. They can't present this article in any way remotely believable to an outsider without throwing in the word white supremacist. They have to, even if there's zero connection. If you took this word out, anybody else would look at this and say, well, I don't see the problem necessarily. You could be critical of an agenda. You could be critical, you could be pro-Trump, blah, blah, blah. Oh, white supremacist. This is the same game they played with who? Gina Carano. People started saying she was being anti-Semitic and they didn't pay any attention to what she actually did, but the word was thrown out there and she had to be fired simply because they associated it with her with no connection whatsoever. No actual connection. And it's the same thing here. It's the only connection is because they say so, because they choose to string words together that they don't like and then throw in white supremacists. This is incredibly malicious. It's absolutely defamation. And again, I think everyone especially people who've been named specifically, should be on the phone with their attorneys on Monday. So then they go on and they talk about radicalization, blah, 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 because according to them, all of these channels are promoting racism, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. And they go again into naming all of these channels because they want to make sure if you are a major controller of the narrative, if you're an institution or an entity like YouTube, like Twitter, like Facebook, or what have you, they want to make sure you can identify the quote-unquote alt-right accounts. But again, they are trying to avoid a lawsuit. They're trying to avoid a lawsuit, and this is how they're trying to do it. Look at how they describe Mahler. Alt-right associated account. Alt-right associated account. And again, it's only alt-right, not because they're white supremacists, but because alt-right now includes being critical of the left. If you're critical of the left, or you seem to be on the right, you're inherently alt-right, and therefore can be included. But they may also say alt-right associated. Alt-right associated because they don't want to be sued. But I would still sue them. I would still do it. I would sue the absolute hell out of them. Joseph Webb, hello. He says, just got here 3 hours on time. So this is, and again, how you single out Mahler is beyond me when this is someone who, again, breaks down his criticism line by line. They target D-Day Cobra, Jeremy. And it does, because he's pro-Trump. Because if you like Trump, you must be racist. You must be. And so, again, this ties into, you can't simply have an opinion they don't like. They will attempt to silence you. That's the entire point. It's not even about the movie, because they acknowledge that the movie has problems. They have a problem, and they consider alt-right anyone who does not agree with their political opinion and their particular agendas. And then they get into the hashtags. And again, the only purpose in their doing this is literally to try to single out individuals who they want canceled. So Ichibaka is on this list of top 25 Twitter users mentioning Boycott Solo. They want you to stop talking, Miss Sarcastic Nerd. They want you to stop talking. You're giving opinions they don't agree with. You're taking up space at the table. And again, Ben Shapiro is a white supremacist, despite being Jewish, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't be critical of minorities or women. You can't even downvote something without it being racist. They accuse the entire community, the entire fandom, of review bombing. Which, explain that to me. There's no such thing as review bombing. If you express a review, if you downvote something or express a negative opinion, how is that given? Why should it be given less weight than a positive one? That's not bombing. It's expressing your perspective. But they don't want that. They don't want you to have an opinion, especially if your opinion is different from theirs, because according to them, The room is overcrowded with negative opinions. So you can't have a negative opinion on anything in a review. That's review bombing. That's a bad thing. You can't downvote anything. You can't critique the creators. You can't critique the subject matter. That makes you racist or sexist. And it just goes on from there. The alt-right's successful political attack against progressive culture. And that's why they soon get into the rise of Skywalker. The rise of Skywalker. And why they think that it was so much better. But anyway, so much worse, actually, than The Last Jedi. They talk about Ariel. And you remember, this is the one who made some incredibly racist comments. People criticized her, and that was racist, according to them. Again, you go through, and they have their little posts. I'm not even going to get into the Rose Tico debacle because we know that it wasn't fans who were the reason why she quit. But even if it was the case that fans really didn't like her as an actress or really didn't like her as the Rose Tico character, guess what? That's their choice. It's like they don't understand the concept of how commercial industry works. You produce a product, or in the case of an actor, you act. And people either like your performance or they don't. And they may even decide they don't like you. They may decide they don't like your character. And they go on their platform, in their space, and they say so. To me, they have a right to do that. But according to these people, that's bad. That means you're racist. That means you're sexist. That means that you shouldn't be able to say anything. You should be silenced. So they mentioned Black and White News. Let's see who else knew. They go on. Again, it's the same thing. They talk about the Rise of Skywalker because they don't like it. They can dislike the Rise of Skywalker, but we can't dislike The Last Jedi. Again, that's the level of logic you're dealing with. It's total hypocrisy. And then they go back to Gamergate, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Rewriting Ripley is a bi-weekly podcast on feminism and fandom in the age of social media by Katie and Lady V. That's it. That's the entire thing. This seems like an attempt to sow seeds of division, says Crack Rock. It is. It's an attempt to sow division, but it's also, by their own word, an attempt to silence those opinions they disagree with. Now it's almost as if it's no longer about division. It's literally about getting rid of. It used to be that they want to divide people, right, into two different categories, but it seems like they've successfully done that now. They've successfully done the division part. They've created that. But what they want to do now is just get rid of that half they don't like, that 40%. Just want to get rid of us now. Divide and then erase. Divide and conquer, divide and erase. That's the goal. And that's what this entire thing is about. It's very slick. It's not clever at all. It's not in any way disguised. It's very clear what they're doing because they announce it in the first few paragraphs. They don't like the criticism of The Last Jedi. They don't like people who are pro-Trump. They don't like criticism of the far left. They don't like criticism of their agenda. And they know that these are things we talk about. So, also knowing that we're not racist, by the way, that this community is not in any way racist or promoting racism, they still have to tie this entire community to racists. And the only way they can do that is by taking those things, like I said 1,000 times during this video, and promote it under the umbrella along with white supremacy and racism. That's it. That's the only way. And that's what they've done. Pedantic Penguin says the final solution to the fandom question. Exactly. That's what this is. That's what this hit piece is. And I don't believe the creator should let it stand. I think, Drunk asked earlier, should he respond to it? His mention is so small in the video and even in the article. And the body of work that he has in terms of his channel, all of the channels, is so obviously not racist. I wouldn't even respond. I think your channel speaks for itself. I think your channel, and when people see you speaking, speaks for itself. It's ridiculous. The only ones I think really had to respond would be Ryan, because he was the direct target, and Geeks and Gamers, and probably Midnight's Edge. I don't know if they have yet. But I think those are the ones who really kind of have to, because they are directly in the quartering, of course. Probably Mauler and the Critical Drinker. Mauler because he was singled out. But yeah, it's just. But that said, I do think everyone directly mentioned should get in contact with their lawyers on Monday. I don't think they should let it stand off in the real world. See, this is the thing too. They puff stuff like this, thinking that there aren't real world consequences. I would, if they had the audacity to name me in this, there would be real world consequences. There would be real world consequences. So that means you're going to get a letter from a lawyer. And we're going to make it clear, like, you're not going to be able to do this underhanded thing of directly but indirectly affiliating people with racist or with white supremacy or anything like that. They tried to be very clear. They tried to do it indirectly. That's why they kept using those comparative languages where they were putting things together that aren't the same and using or a lot, this or that. Because they were trying to be careful to keep them separate, but put them under the same general umbrella. That was the tactic that they used. But that should not necessarily cover them for at least the threat of a lawsuit. Would a lawsuit be successful in this case? Maybe, maybe not. But you could scare the hell out of them. Executive producer Sol Leibowitz says, note that Ryan, Critical Drinker, EVS, and The Quartering have their channels as side jobs. I mean, they would have to if that's the lifetime earnings. That's why I'm saying when they put that in there, that's not to, it doesn't prove that anyone is profiting from talking about The Last Jedi. It actually undermines their point because the earnings are not that substantial. If you're looking at lifetime earnings, which for some of these channels is what, 2 or 3 years or more? 5, 6, that's the other thing too. They didn't include, how long these channels have been in existence. But I'm sorry. No. It's not a ton of money. So you can't say that that's the motivation. It completely undermines their point. The only reason they would include it is because they wanted to name and identify the channels they want to get rid of. Cavatino Che says, how is wanting to talk about things one is passionate about, namely raising money to combat human trafficking, racism, wrong? They don't care about that. They could care less. But yeah, that's what happened. That is what happened. Was the creator of the article white? Probably. You know, it's usually white liberals who do this stuff. I went robot. Yeah, the internet here is really crazy right now. Sorry. But that's it. That's what happened. So if you guys want to review the article, it is titled In Plain Sight, How White Supremacy, Misogyny, and Hate Targeted the Star Wars Sequels Trilogy and Won by Rewriting Ripley. That is something you can do if you choose to. And I do have responses in the description below if you want to check those out as well. Yeah, I think everybody should have their lawyers contacting them tomorrow. Absolutely. Even though geeks and gamers may want to take more action than just a letter. Really, because I mean that's yeah. So guys, thanks for joining me. That concludes today's episode of Just Jayne. I hope everybody has a fantastic day despite all of the insanity with this entire thing. And what's funny is I had taken a break. I had taken a break from social media only to come back to this foolishness. You gonna get your fishing license? Good. Have a good day. All right, everybody. Have a good day. Have fun. Try to find something to be happy about. Maybe spend some time off of social media because it's crazy right now. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining me. Let's see. See you later.